Hi, I'm Stephen Sklar, and we're back with the third edition of Bracketology. Same crew as the first two. We'll start with the one closest to me, Mr. Manning out of Union College. Next to him, Mr. Howley. We got a shake-up at the table, not the same setup. And then next to him, Coach Supple. Let's get right to the brackets. It's Final Four time. We have my own bracket. 3 out of 4 Final Four teams gone, but the one that remains was my riskiest pick, Texas Tech. It all crumbled apart. My two my two championship teams underperformed in their games. North Carolina against Auburn, and Duke went down to Michigan State. Speaking of Michigan State, Mr. Manning, that's your championship team.
It is.
Why don't you tell us where things went wrong, when things started to go right?
First, let me remind our great host here that I was mocked a little bit after my first round, but I have 2 of the teams still remaining. So if that ends up being the finals, I'm looking good. But yeah, Michigan State was the team that I said from the beginning that I really liked in this tournament. And something that we spoke about in episode 1, I think Coach Howley, you brought it up. I think Duke, we could have circled that loss when Duke drew Michigan State in their region. Being the overall #1 seed, I thought that was a tough pull for them, getting, in my opinion, the best 2 out of all that. And that's something we can talk about later. But I really felt that Duke was vulnerable, despite having 2 of the best players in the tournament. They shot the ball, like we said, under 30% from the 3. Foul shooting was a problem, and the concentration of scoring within 2 guys. And sure enough, when the game was on the line, they had a chance to go to the foul line to tie it up, and Michigan State pulled it out. So I'm a Tom Izzo fan. I said I love guard play in the tournament, and Cassius Winston is just playing great basketball right now. So I'm sticking with him.
And you know what? As a result of that Duke-Michigan State game, R.J. Barrett's stock might even fall a little bit with players like Jarrett Culver making their way up. Congratulations on being the only one at this table with 2 Final Four teams still on the board. We got Coach Supple. How are you doing so far? Where did things go right? Where did things actually go wrong for you?
Well, they went wrong this weekend, that's for sure. Coming into the weekend, I had all 4 teams alive and was feeling pretty good. And 3 out of 4 went down in some tight games. I had Gonzaga going to the championship, and that was a great basketball game to watch. And the #1 defense beat the #1 offense in that game. But that was a back and forth, really exciting game. The kid Norvell on Gonzaga had me very frustrated with some of those forced threes. But that's what Texas Tech does. They force you into shots you don't want to take, and that was an impressive win for Texas Tech. I feel good about Virginia. We'll talk about the matchup later, but having them as the winner, I'm excited that they're there and hoping all that adversity they face, like Coach Bennett has been talking about the last few days, I'm hoping all that adversity they faced in the past can get me to a championship run here.
Now, we had a little bit of fun with Mr. Manning in the last one. I think it's time that we have a little bit of fun with Mr. Howley, who is the only one at the table with 0 Final Four teams left in the tournament.
Yeah. A little golden sombrero on that one. It's unfortunate. I know you're going to ask me, when did it start to go wrong? Very early. I tried to, figure out what was going on, try and be, outsmart everybody, but Villanova just didn't have it. They ran into a Purdue team that dominated them, so that was the beginning. And I was ride or die for Gonzaga, but I know Jesse and I are upset. And Chris Long had a nice tweet out there. It was, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 14 times, you're Gonzaga. Every year it's like, and this is going to be the year, but I guess that's the Met fan in me. Just, don't learn from our mistakes. It's unfortunate.
Let's not talk some baseball. Let's get right into the question. I told Mr. Howley this before. I threw a burger across my dining room before after the Yankees got 0 runs with bases loaded. I was not very happy. But,
a lot of intensity for the opening week.
Yeah. Let's get into the questioning a little bit. Obviously, the biggest storyline to come out of the tournament since we last spoke is Duke losing to Michigan State. I'm going to direct this to Mr. Manning because he actually predicted that matchup. What is it about MSU that gave them the edge? What was it that you saw that made you say, I'm going to pick this team?
I think it's experience. As much as we fall in love in the nation with the big freshman class and the one-and-done era, which could be coming to an end. We'll see how the NCAA handles the new rules. Michigan State always tends to have some upperclassmen that play well. Coach Izzo is definitely tournament tested, as is Coach Krzyzewski. But I think that upperclassman experience always comes through. I think Izzo, again, is a great X's and O coach. He took a timeout early there and ran a great play. Even though it wasn't the first option, they got that wide open three late in the game that put him up. And, I think the kids, I think there's something to be said for the Big Ten. Everybody talked about the ACC this year being the strongest conference. But in that one, you got a head-to-head matchup, and I think the Big Ten was just as tested and as ready. And that's what I was looking for. That's what I liked.
Mr. Howley.
I love Izzo as a coach. He's one of my favorite coaches when it comes to the madness, what he does. Interesting that in the last possession, Krzyzewski had a timeout, didn't take it, and wanted to trust his players, which with the freshman on the floor, I thought was an interesting choice. He knows better than I do. If a bucket goes in there, everybody says that's why, he knows what he's doing. I don't know if that would have helped them, but you could see, I think it was the cohesion, the team play matters in crunch time. If you've been playing with a guy, not just for that year, and you even heard Zion said how he misses probably the last time that team's playing together. But you've been playing with somebody for years. You just know, you just trust a little bit more. And it might be hard to trust when you've only been playing with guys for how many months? It was really that season that you have if you're just a freshman. That's your one time there, as opposed to the guys who've just lived with each other for 3 or 4 years. I think that makes a difference of who you've got with you on your side.
Well, if you want to talk about team play, halftime of that game, I decided to go to Twitter, see what's going on. Saw this thing from ESPN's Twitter. 13-0 run with 5 minutes left in the first half from MSU. 9 of those points scored off of turnovers.
Yeah, and I don't know if Duke scored a point off of turnovers in the entire game. At some point in the second half, it was, I think, 15-0.
They definitely did it in that run.
Yeah, and this was just, it was really remarkable. And the defense of the Big Ten, I think that play that they had to step up every night, there's no real weak spots in there. I think that really helped them.
And keep in mind, that was a regional final, but Duke had been pushing their limits last couple games. They were a tip
Lucky
away.
to be there.
Yeah, a tip away from losing to UCF. They were a lob layup away from getting beat to get into the regional final. So it seemed like they were on the verge of getting beat for 3 weeks.
Well, I really think their inexperience killed them there because, you take a look at that 13-point run that MSU goes on, and you even take a look at R.J. Barrett's missed free throw at the end. When the crowd gets rowdy, there's people going against you, you hear that. Especially that young, it's hard to block that kind of noise out, and it gets under your skin. Coach Supple, what do you have to say?
Yeah, I agree. I think the turnover thing that we've been talking about is big. In Michigan State, the last 2 games, they've had 7 turnovers in back-to-back games, which is, the lowest in the tournament. They're averaging 18 assists, so their assist-to-turnover ratio has been, I think, what has allowed them to dominate the flow of every game. And Cassius Winston is something special to watch as a college player. I'm not sure where he projects as an NBA player yet, but he and obviously Edwards over on Purdue, just the most ball-dominant guards. When things go wrong, they get the ball in his hands, he calms everyone down, and they end up with some type of quality shot in almost every big possession. And there's a lot to be said. Guard play wins in a tournament, and those 2 were the best, and he's probably the best still going. So.
And you wonder how Texas Tech is going to approach that team defensively. They're the 3rd-ranked scoring defense in the nation. But is there any way to really stop Cassius Winston? It seems like he can score in so many different ways. It seems like he'll just go in for a running floater. There's not much you can do to stop that if he gets it over your fingertips.
There's not much. I won't be surprised if once he gives the ball up, if they try and then deny him to allow him not to be able to control the offense. Force someone else to create a shot for that team. That's a game plan that I would go in with.
If they could work the hands into Xavier Tillman, they have a much better chance at dominating the inside defensively than they do trying to stop Cassius Winston. Let's move over to the right half of the bracket. Auburn, they're one of the Final Four teams. They lost their big man, Chuma Okeke, to a torn ACL. A lot of people thought that was going to be their downfall in the Elite Eight matchup, but they actually came back and won that game. How do they move forward as they now have to go up against the almighty Virginia Cavaliers? Coach Supple.
I think it's going to be difficult for them. I think, you never want to see a young man get injured like that. But I think they used it as kind of a rallying cry to say, kind of win this for our guy. They're going to live and die with the 3, which I think is going to be tough for them. If they have a great shooting night, they have a chance. They're shooting, almost 44% from 3 this year, one of the best shooting teams in the country. The one thing I do give them a chance is, every round you keep seeing who they're playing. We talked about it before the show. They were a 5 versus 12. Then they take out Kansas. They take out UNC. They take out Kentucky. At some point, you think they're going to slow down, but they keep finding ways to win. I do think Virginia's going to win this game. I think it's going to be a battle. I think it's going to be a little low scoring. I think the key to it is going to be Kihei Clark for Virginia. The way he increased Virginia's defensive intensity in the last game, I thought changed the entire game for Virginia. Obviously, the big shot at the end to go to overtime. Virginia's defense, obviously, one of the best in the country. They're holding the best 3-point defensive team in the country. So again, it's that defense versus offense. Texas Tech won with defense last round. I think Virginia will win with defense this round.
They kind of counteract one another. And you spoke about how Auburn's going to have to live and die by the 3. The thing is, even if those shots sink, you saw Carson Edwards drop 42. I'm not sure what the exact number of 3-pointers is, but I think the last time I checked, it was somewhere around 7 or something like that. They'll go tit for tat with you. It'll be a back-and-forth game, and they will grind it out to the last second.
I was going to say, the only thing is Virginia has shot awful from 3 in the tournament, even though they've been a great 3-point shooting team all year. So if they find a way to knock down some of their threes, I think that's the only way Virginia could kind of take off on them a little bit. But I expect a low-scoring battle for 4 quarters.
Yeah, Kyle Guy has to find that trigger like he did in the Elite Eight matchup.
Well, coming off of like an injury, like they rally the troops into like kind of a good cry going in. I think with only 1 day to prepare and going into that game, that's good. When you have now a week to prepare, and Virginia knows that's the case, I think that edge kind of swings to Virginia's side. Actually playing, and then you start to realize, all right, we're missing an important piece now. How are we going to deal with that? And Virginia's going to exploit that. And if you give a good coach a long enough time, I think that's a benefit there. Also, Virginia, you said at the beginning, you love a story. I mean, they're always going to be the answer to that trivia question, the number 1 seed that fell to a 16. But how great would that asterisk be after it to be like, by the way, they went on to win the championship next year. And that's definitely something all those guys are thinking about. And that's their motivation going into there. They've got a lot of unfinished business on their plate. And it'll be exciting to see them take it down. I mean, Auburn, they've run with UNC. They went up against Kentucky. I mean, it's just, and that's the kind of basketball they wanted to play when they were going up against UNC. So it's nice to see what Bruce Pearl's done with them. I counted them out. I thought they were the 5 that was going to lose. But as we know, I'm not really good with predictions.
Can we get that clip? Can we get that clip in there?
Roll that back. I was an egg on my face. No, for sure. I'll go with New Mexico State just because it's not football season. Auburn they're in the wrong bracket there.
I like how I'm talking to the camera, and I'll be the one that puts that in there. So I'm really talking to myself. Mr. Manning.
Yeah, it's a win-win because if Virginia wins, my bracket still looks good, and if Auburn wins, we get more FaceTime with Charles Barkley, which I'm finding is a show within a show.
Absolutely.
I mean, he's pretty funny. I love his commentary, and it's fun watching him as a fan. All weekend. He was talking about how we are rebounding the ball well and we are playing so well.
He's one of those few people that actually say that, though, because
right, exactly.
he was on the team. When Mr. Bickman does it about Michigan, I forgot that he had played.
Well, that was a fun in-studio rivalry with Kenny the Jet and Charles Barkley. You saw them decking out their portions of the desk.
And they still get competitive, even though they have a stake in it. You love to see that.
Yes. Yeah. But I actually give Auburn a fighting chance. We spoke about the storylines. Both teams hold 2 very emotional storylines. Obviously, with Virginia falling to the 16 seed last year, and now Okeke gone to the torn ACL, they're really playing for him. I think it's something worth noticing that Auburn has forced opposing teams in this tournament to 16 turnovers, 16 turnovers, 14 turnovers, and 14 turnovers. And in that last game, they're without Okeke, their leading steal guy, who had 9 steals in the first 3 games. So I think they have a lot of heart, and I think it's actually going to be a down-to-the-wire matchup. It'll be interesting to see who wins. But maybe we get some of those predictions with my next question. Let's get the opportunity to start fresh for a second. Repick our championship game. There's 2 of us at the table who have both of their championship teams eliminated. Why don't we start with one of them, Mr. Howley?
Yeah, you really have a clean slate.
Yeah, no, this is all starting over again.
It's really nice for you, huh?
Yeah, I didn't know it was going to be that way. At this point, I'm just watching for good. They've been great games. Even the one that Gonzaga went out on. It was. I love the intensity level. I mean, those other games have it, but you could feel it through the screen. The intensity in that game, going back and forth. I got my son in, and we were watching. He was cheering against me, so it was fun. The first weekend, my one son Jackson was teaching Owen how to dribble in the garage because it was too windy to go outside that day. Like, that's what I love about this time of year and the opportunities there for these kids. So I'm just really looking for good games. If I had to pick, I guess I'm going to, well, these are the people that lose, but I'll go with Izzo and Michigan State from the one side, and I guess I'm going to like to see Virginia, finish up the story. If they got to be the one seed to lose, I like to see them go back again. By the way, UMBC Twitter feed trolling your Yankees over the weekend, so watch out for that.
Well, my Yankees deserved every bit of it. I think they were like 5 for 21 with runners in scoring position. That's atrocious.
Aren't they predicting the Baltimore to be the worst team in baseball this year? Yes.
I said that if you're legally allowed to bet, you should go put $5 on the Orioles winning the division.
Oh, there you go.
If you lose $5, you lose $5. But you
So the
could
answer is
win a
yes,
bit.
they're the worst team.
Oh yeah, they're hands down the worst team.
Just a Met fan rubbing that in a little bit, but
That's
we'll
fine.
save that for another podcast.
What did you start 11-1 last year?
Yeah, we'll see.
It's okay, don't worry about it.
April baseball. Let's
It's
go.
all right.
Mets.
It's all right. We'll go in order from.
Let's go
least,
back to basketball.
We'll go in order from least Final Four teams to most Final Four teams. Excluding me, I'll go last. So Coach Supple.
On that side note, I think your son has a future in coaching. That was pretty impressive, that video you sent. I will start with, I think the three of us are going to have the same finals. I'm going to go with Michigan State. I think Cassius Winston is one of the few guards that can handle the ball versus that Texas Tech defense and still control the flow of the game, still get them into sets, score when he has to, but even when he's not scoring, he just controls the entire tempo of the game, and it's very, very impressive to watch. Even down to that last play, being able to get out in front and run the clock out, that was impressive.
That was a great play. That he didn't even go for the score, just kept going.
Really, really great job by him. I've been more and more impressed every game.
I mean, that was like a third option play too. They tried getting him twice before that, and he just improvises.
It was very impressive, and I think Virginia, who I picked as my team to win, obviously I'm going to stick with them and ride with them versus Auburn. I do think Auburn has a chance if they have a great shooting night, but I think Virginia's defense in the end will prevail, very similar to the way they did the round before, where they held the opponent scoreless in the last 5 minutes of the game. I think it'll be that type of game, and I'm going to stick with my pick from the beginning. I think Virginia rebounds with the whole storyline, goes from the laughing stock of the tournament to cutting down the nets.
Mr. Manning.
Yeah, since it's on my board over there, I'm gonna stick with Michigan State, Virginia.
Going to you is more of a formality.
Here's where you can cut to episode 1 where I said Tom Izzo's cutting down the nets, and
Let's roll that back.
you can insert there.
Back.
Virginia, Michigan State in the finals. Tom Izzo cuts down the nets, 68-64. And if it pans out that way, then you can have me back for like a one-on-one show or something.
So I'm going to agree with I'm agree with you guys on one of your picks. I'm actually going to pick Auburn over Virginia.
Yeah.
I would. Listen.
We got to shake it up a little bit.
Well, yeah, I was bold. You guys all were picking the 1 seeds as your locks. I was picking MSU over LSU. I was proud of myself for that. Texas Tech, my only final. Good for me. Good for
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, you're going to hurt yourself, pat yourself on the back there.
I didn't hurt myself.
Okay, good.
But
You're doing a
I'm
lot.
actually going to pick Auburn because I think that Bruce Pearl has put together such a well-rounded nucleus on that team that it's actually going to help them out when it comes to the finals. But I actually think Michigan State is going to be the team to come out of that left half of the bracket. I mean, the NCAA's got to be kicking themselves if Virginia goes up against Texas Tech. That would be an awful game.
I got to change the final score of my bracket if that's going to be in the 30s or 40s.
a
And
battle.
I mean, we saw what happened in the Texas Tech-Michigan game. That would be an awful game from a spectator standpoint, and I'm really, really rooting against that happening. Any final remarks before we close off the 3rd edition?
Nothing specific. I think this weekend, though, we got to see what March Madness was all about. I mean, almost every game came down to those last few minutes where you're screaming at the television, excited, jumping around. And that's what March Madness is all about. Really exciting.
Definitely. Yeah, it's just fun to be. I haven't yelled at the TV in a while, so it was good to see that. It was good just to have the competitive juices going and these, people answering the bell, taking advantage of opportunities that they have, which is just what, the tournament's all about, making the best of it. Like, for instance, I'm like a Cinderella. I'm just happy to be here. These guys want to get things right.
Yeah. I'll just leave it with kudos to you and your crew here. You're doing a great job with Bracketology. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Short spoken. All right.
Let's go Mets.
We'll cut that out. Am I the only Yankee fan at this table?
Yes.
That's.
Yeah, you are
I
sitting.
see you, Jesse.
You are sitting on the end for a reason.
It's all right. 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus
All
5
right.
plus 2.
Yeah, half of those, there was 10 teams in the league. Don't worry about it.
I don't know. It's still 27. All right, I'm Stephen Sklar here with Bracketology Part 3. Thank you, and see you next time.
Let's go Mets.